Thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports NASCAR on Prime Sports Network. This is our weekly show where we take a look at the standings following every NASCAR Cup Series race. And Eric Smith from RaceReviewOnline.net joins me, as always. Spent the last couple of weeks at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he's home again. So
yep, back home again. Still the state, still Indiana, just not at my second home with the pagoda behind me. So yeah, but back, and now we focus towards IndyCar. You focus on championship now, and same with NASCAR. We got through Memorial Day weekend, and there's 11 regular season races left, and then we're in the playoffs. We're already 15 races into the season, and there's less than that left to get to the playoffs. So it'll go quick, and we're almost there.
Yeah, matter of fact, I can just quickly switch over to here to take a look. So here we have Sonoma, Nashville. So we got back-to-back road courses coming up. Then
Nashville's it's the oval.
Oh, it is an oval.
Races Nashville. Yeah, it's
okay, good.
It's like a
cool
1.3 mile. It's a concrete oval. So
this isn't the track that they were all uppity about on the news, is it?
No. So that's the there's a short track, the fairgrounds. This track was brought. The eventual goal is to move to the fairgrounds, but they had to get the zoning permits, approval.
Oh, they want to go there.
Yeah, they're going to eventually go.
Oh, they're going to go there
trying
eventually.
To get it through.
Okay.
Yeah. So they want to get back into Nashville because they noticed it's a good TV market. They had the awards banquet there a few years ago. They want to. It's a good market for them.
Okay.
But that track was built in like the early 1900s before housing was built around it. And so that's why you got people that are like, oh, I can't believe we're going to race. It's like that track has been there longer than your house has been there.
It's like you move to an area where there's a sleeping volcano and you go, well, it's sleeping, but how do you know it's going to sleep much longer? Nobody knows.
Exactly. They're going to eventually go there. And so what happened was Dover the people that own Dover own this Nashville Speedway, this track. It's just to the east of Nashville, the city. It's a concrete 1.3 mile. So it's going to run like Darlington, but the track surface is like Bristol.
Don't run like Darlington.
It's going to be like that. It wasn't a good track for the Xfinity cars. That's why they stopped going there. But this is kind of a short gap. What their plan is, they moved one of the Dover races to Nashville, hope to gain a few years of ticket revenue, and they're going to spend that money to renovate the Nashville Fairgrounds to bring the track up to NASCAR code of the new safer barriers, the lighting, the press box, the pit road. But they need money to do that. Instead of asking the city, NASCAR and Dover, which is smart, was like, well, let's just use this track. There's, I think, 40 to 50. There's a 35,000 seating capacity. And they're like, well, we need more for a NASCAR race at the track that they're going to go to here in a few weeks.
It'll be like Wrigley Field.
Temporary seating. Yeah. It got it up to like 50,000 and it sold out. So they're thinking, hey, we could sell this out for a few years, use this revenue. We don't need to put it back into this track because this is only a stopgap. Let's take that revenue and put it over here.
So this is Lebanon.
And fix. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
how far away from Bristol?
Probably at least a couple hours.
Oh, so it's further west.
Yeah, okay. It's right near Nashville. It's like a suburb of Nashville. Okay. It's like the far east part of Nashville. So it's. I'm glad. I see their vision. I see their plan. Is the racing going to be great? Who knows? But at least they're just using that money from that race.
Okay.
Because we're going to get a short track out of it in the future. So I see what they're doing. It's sold out. It's a good market.
Yeah, sure.
They're allowed to go 100% capacity, and so it'll be interesting. But again, it's an inaugural race, so you got a road course and then an inaugural race, two races in a row. Granted, we had the All-Star break in between there, which doesn't mean anything for the points. But
should they have taken Dover away instead of Darlington?
No, I'd rather have two Darlington. Dover's just redundant. I'm nothing against Dover. Sorry for anybody that's a big fan of Dover that could be listening to this, but I'm glad we're only going there once instead of twice. Like that, I would rather, instead of two races at Dover, even if Nashville is still a dud, I would rather at least see something new.
Yeah, sure, I agree.
Than two Dover. And Darlington's kind of, it's right in your fan base. Southeast is prime NASCAR. So I'm glad. I'd rather go to Darlington twice, take one day away from Dover, and put it here than the other way around. So I like it. Plus, it's going to shake things up. Nobody knows what to expect. So
That's
you
true.
can. So I'll take it for this year. It's something new, something changes. So I like it.
And then after that, the back-to-back weekend at Pocono, then the road course again. This one being in Wisconsin, correct?
Road America. Yeah,
Okay.
that's so IndyCar will be there, which we kind of get closer to time. Similar track trend because NASCAR, the Cup guys have never raced at Road America before. They've raced Xfinity cars there. So this will be another inaugural event.
Has the racing been
4th
good
of July
here?
weekend. Oh yeah, it's a good track. It's a 4-mile road course. So NASCAR, it's good because there's some braking zones. Indy cars are flying around there. NASCAR obviously slower. It'll take about 2 minutes to make a lap.
Oh, so there's there'll be speed coming into play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's good braking zones. It's a good track for NASCAR. They'll beat each other up on this track. It's IndyCar. Keep in mind, it's a 4-mile track. In the IndyCar race, there's only 55 laps, and so you can only imagine a NASCAR race. It's going to be probably even shorter because it's probably double the lap time. But
okay. And this is on the 4th of
July.
July.
Yep, on the 4th of July. So it'll be a good. I don't know about the 4th of July date for that. I think, but
yeah, Wisconsin on the 4th of July
on a road course that takes 2 minutes to get around, but it'll be a good one. The drivers like this track. It's a popular road course. So, but yeah. So I mean, really, you look at that little stretch right there between Sonoma, Nashville, the doubleheader in Pocono, and Road America. For these playoff standings could really turn it upside down again because you don't know what you're going to get through some Pocono. It's going to be predictable as always, but these others, I think, could really turn this playoff standings up on its head again.
Yep, and then we no more. Well, the final 5 races are a little bit more, common locations, but still there'll be Watkins Glen, another road course, and then is Indianapolis is going to be back-to-back road courses then.
It's a road course. Yep, another road course.
So Glen and Indianapolis, back-to-back road courses. So you'll be there. So we'll have to take advantage of that. And then Michigan, and then Daytona, which is again, I think it's an awesome idea to have Daytona just before the playoffs. So.
Well, think about that ending. You've got 2 road courses and a super speedway in the final 4 weeks of the regular season. That could really turn things around. I mean, that's 3 of your final 4 races are. Let's call them wild card tracks. They're not your typical cookie cutter short track. It's not Darlington. It's not Atlanta. It is literally 2 road courses and a super speedway. So nothing is guaranteed as we even get to that ending point. I think you're going to have some drivers sweating bullets getting to that point. And then you got to look at the point that we're about to go through. Like I just said, Sonoma, Nashville, Road America are 3 of your next 5 races. And then I just talked about 3 of the bottom 4 races of this. So it's far. This playoffs, as drivers we'll talk about in a second, are starting to separate themselves. It's far from over because you got some weird tracks coming up that aren't really going to be. And I'll write about this coming up. I don't think you're going to know a lot about the championship over these next 11 weeks because not a lot of these tracks are going to translate to the playoffs. Sure. But it's also could shape your playoffs. This is going to shape the playoffs, but not going to necessarily be. If somebody doesn't hit these setups right on these tracks, don't necessarily write them off for a playoff stretch because what about these next few tracks? Are you like, oh, well, Ryan Blaney has 1 top 10 in these last 11 races. Like, well, also look at the tracks leading up to this point. Yes, you can look at, these guys are separating themselves. These last few weeks, really month and a half, have been a lot of playoff tracks, playoff previews. This next stretch I'm not going to put a lot of stock into other than just the momentum factor. Other than that, there's nothing really else you can take for a championship for these next 11 weeks.
Yep, 11 races, and 4 of those will be road courses. 1 will be a brand new event, and the other is Daytona. So it should be a lot of fun. Let's now take a look at the standings. And we know that Denny Hamlin is still in front, but another race has gone by, and Denny Hamlin still does not have a win. But that's okay because Denny Hamlin will be in the playoffs no matter what. And then we have Kyle Larson. So Kyle Larson is look, this was inevitable. He had the 3 straight runner-ups. We all liked them. I don't remember the last time we all had a winner in the same week.
Yeah.
But it's just, and then I mean, there wasn't. we don't have a lot of qualifying this season, so this was one of those where we made our picks before we even knew what qualifying turned out. Once Kyle Larson was on the pole, it was even more evident that he was going to be
Yeah.
the driver to beat. And unfortunately, CG and I talked about it, that there was going to be the opportunity for someone like Kyle Larson to go out there and dominate, because Charlotte is, and the Coke 600 especially, is a dominating type of track. And that's exactly what we got, as Larson led 327 of 400.
Yeah, it's as weird as it sounds. It's like, can we maybe not qualify at Charlotte?
Probably not.
Can we invert the field? Because Larson put, I mean, I wrote about that in my track trends last week for Charlotte. It's just you see a lot of guys dominate that race. Kyle did it. Truex, I think, did it. I know Truex did. Kyle did it, and now Larson. I want to say it's like 4 of the last 6 years, somebody's led over 300 of the 400 laps. It's like, well, can we? Granted, it's the 600. You got to stand out. You're never going to change it. But we've saw 600 miles of redundancy. By the time I got back from the track, got all my writing done. I wrote 11 Indy 500 articles on Sunday alone. Flipped the race on. The running order looked exactly no different than it really did from the start of the race. I'm like, oh, I really missed nothing.
Nope.
But other than looking at the end, Kyle Larson winning by like 10 seconds over a 600-mile race. So he's eventually going to find his way to the front anyway. So it's like, I'd be good if we just don't even qualify there anymore. Can we just take the
why are they qualifying there?
A premier event. I think they thought because it was, hey, it's a 600, it's a crown jewel, let's maybe qualify. But
again, bad move. We don't need it to be more, because look at Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch broke through the Hendrick machine and finished third, which is an accomplishment considering how strong Hendrick is and was at this track for almost all weekend. And big surprise, Kyle Busch gets an opportunity to qualify and then has a really good run. See what happens?
And practice. He's been saying, give me practice. So I think. And Kyle Larson made an interesting note. It was to one of my friends, NASCAR. His name's Noah Lewis. He talked to him at one of the dirt tracks. I think it was near Hickory, actually, over the weekend after qualifying. Larson would check it out, and he was asking about practice and qualifying. And Larson mentioned to him, "I would be okay if we don't, because we're so good right now. I know that we're not going to have much the rest of the year." But I don't want to give an opportunity for guys to catch up to us. They could find something out in practice, because right now I feel like we're that far ahead. I don't want to give guys a chance to have practice and figure it out. And Kyle Busch, like you said, prime example. He's been saying that for over a year. That's where they're lacking. And look at what he does. He's the only guy that had anything for the Hendrick cars on Sunday night. That was it. Nobody else had any.
Nope.
They would have went 1, 2, 3, 4 again if not for Kyle Busch. And even Kyle's like, they're still in a league of their own. I might have finished and kind of in the middle of them, but I had nothing. But they're just in a league of their own right now. So, but that's also why I said last week or week before, I don't remember, about Kyle, that I wouldn't sleep on him yet. And I wrote about this too, that he usually figures it out as the season goes on. And if you look at what he's doing right now, I mean, he won Kansas. He was third in Darlington. He's third again. He's got 4 top 10s his last 5. You could kind of sense something there that they're getting better. And these Hendrick guys, they're dominating right now, but you don't want to stall out either. It's hard to make changes with an eye to the future. Like, our cars have speed, but we still need to tinker with it. Where somebody like Kyle's close and can continually to get better. That I think right now, if you look at the playoffs championships moving forward, Kyle is probably the main threat to Hendrick right now. And it's weird as it sounds, because he hasn't shown a whole lot, hasn't led a lot of laps, hasn't been doing a whole lot, but he's rising. And that's what I like to see out of a driver right now, where I think you could say a lot of other guys are kind of going backwards. And Denny Hamlin, like we just talked about, he's 318 points over the cut line. He's probably going to win the regular season championship, like we talked about, without winning a race, and he's going to be in. But he's had 8 top 5s in his first 9 races of the season. He's only got 1 in the last 6. He looks like he's kind of going backwards. Now, granted, I need to get to another NASCAR race to talk to these guys in person. Are they going backwards because they're experimenting, trying to find more speed to go forward later? or has guys caught him. I think it might be more Hendrick has caught him and passed him.
Yeah, but we
Because
talked
at the
about this
beginning
in
of
the
the year,
beginning of the season. It's a second half
yep,
series, and
yep,
this is what happens. It's just even Kyle Larson, what he's doing right now, this isn't going to last. At some
no,
point, he will cool off. Now, I'm not saying he's going to cool off completely, but he's just not going to be running in the top 5 or the top 2 the way he is, especially with all these crazy tracks coming up.
yeah, he's gonna. If I were him, I mean, he's got 4 straight top 2 finishes. 40% of his season, he's finished in the top 2. Eventually, that's like you said, going to cool off a little bit. But can they regain it? That's
Yes.
going to be the key. It's going to ebb and flow. But the guys that get hot, it's like we talked about stick and ball sports. You could have a team look great in the regular season of the NFL, but it's when they get to December. Who is entering the playoffs playing well? I've seen so many teams that look great in the regular season, rest starters, back their way into the playoffs, and they don't do anything come the Super Bowl. I mean, Tampa Bay is a prime example. They got hot at the right time.
Yeah, they weren't beating
And
anybody that was good in the
no,
regular season. They were getting beat up in the regular season by the
yep,
best teams. Or just take a look at the Washington Nationals a couple years ago.
same thing.
They
Yep,
were terrible early in the season. They got hot in the last month, and they won every big game during the playoffs to win a world championship. So that's
NASCAR is the same way, and I wrote about that coming into the season. That it's the champions, the last in this format, the playoff era, usually 1 win, 2 wins in the regular season. They didn't do much. It's just they got hot in the play. They got hot at the right time, and right now, Hamlin started hot. He's cooled. Hendrick has rose up, but can they sustain that? Can they keep that going? Where somebody like Kyle's still, to me, going up. Did Hendrick hit their plateau and they're here, but you got guys still catching them? Is it going to be like a Hamlin? Or people going to pass them? Penske's kind of went down, but they've got more to gain.
yeah.
So
Penske's
that's
cooled
what's
off.
going to be.
Yeah, Penske's cooled off a little bit, but that's how it looked.
They do that
year.
every year. Yeah. And they do that every year, and then you look in the playoffs like, whoa, they got 2 guys in the championship 4 again.
Yeah.
So they know what they're doing. So that's why it's far from over. Right now, you could say, hey, one of the burning questions, which I might have in this week or I might hold it off for another week, is you can ask it right now, are Hendrick going to sweep the championship 4? Right now, at this point, you could say, yeah, who's going to knock the 4 of them out of the championship 4?
Yeah.
You know it's not going to happen, but who of their 4 don't even make it to the championship 4? They're all running so good right now. So,
well, this is a great season too, because we have 9 drivers that can win a championship, and we wouldn't even blink about it. 9.
No.
And that's awesome. Matter of fact, I can even go 10. Excuse me, 10. We're going to go 10 all the way to Keselowski. So we can go 1 through 10 to Keselowski at 10. All 10 of those drivers can win the championship.
Yep. And that's what's going to make, I think, the end of the second round, because you got down to 12, getting it down to that 10, and then that third round to get to the championship 4, because you're going to have 8, to me, formidable drivers that any one of them can win that championship. That round of 8 is going to be a cutthroat, elbows out, because a win gets you in to the championship 4. I think you're going to see a wild, because you got Texas, Kansas, Martinsville. Texas and Kansas, those 1.5 miles where track position, strategy can play, and then you got Martinsville going into Phoenix again. You better get yourself right for those 3 races if you can get there. So it's, I think it's going to be a hell of a playoff, just because it is. You're starting to see guys distance themselves right now, but it doesn't mean anything come playoff time. I think you're going to have, like you said, there's a bunch of different guys that can win this thing, and that's why the odds for the futures, you might as well just keep. I mean, was it 5-1 still the favorite? I mean, we still don't have a 2 or 3-1
last year. Yeah. So that's why it's good.
And Byron's still what, 12?
Byron is
1,
still 12-1 with play. And again, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I would just advise someone, hey, if you really want to, if you're starting today, just put your money on Byron, Blaney, and Bowman. That's it. And then wait a couple of weeks and we'll see what happens. But because those are 3 just bargains. I mean, come on, 12 and 14-1 with those 3 drivers.
Since we've left Daytona in February, it is June 1st. Since we've left Daytona, Byron's worst finish is 11th. Worst. That's his worst finish. That guy is, you look at, and that was at Coda in the rain. That wasn't anything by his fault. He's got 3 fourth place finishes his last 4 results of the season. Like he's that guy that could find a little bit more speed. He's right
Yeah,
there.
I was a little
Who's to
bit
say he doesn't
disappointed
find something?
in him not being able to lead more laps on Sunday. I thought he had the car, he was in position, he had to lead a little bit, but it's like, you know, but then again, it's just like you said, it's just maybe they're just not there yet, and just imagine what could happen, and if they time it right, you know,
Yep.
towards the end of the season when it matters the most. So.
Exactly. And here's what's weird is we talked about these races coming up. Say he cools off a little bit, which is potential. He could. Anybody could cool
Yep.
off for this stretch. We could get even better odds for this guy. That's why I say right now to this point moving forward, don't pay a whole lot of attention for championship implications because these next 11 races aren't going to really do much for who's going to win the championship other than, like I said, who gets hot or not. And you got Byron right now at like 13-1, 12-1, 13-1, and he could get even better. He could fall even better to us. So he's a bargain. Him and Blaney. Like I said, Blaney was like 12-1 too, I think. So
Elliott's the only one.
keep...
We're just if you now look. The thing with Elliott, why I think it's hard. I don't even know if I put any money on him this year. I don't think I have because it's just so hard to repeat, especially with as much parity as there is this season. If he finds, but throw out the repeat, we know he's more than capable of also getting hot. He's already started the last couple of weeks, and maybe this is the beginning of him getting hot. And now we're going to all these road courses. So this could be the time that Chase Elliott, the problem has been all season is Chase Elliott's odds. He hasn't done anything, and his odds never really moved. They were still always 5-1, 6-1, 7-1, 6-1, 5-1. It's like you can't really put money on Elliott right now, and I can imagine what happens if he gets hot. Then he's the guy that probably goes down to 3-1 quicker than anyone else.
For sure. That's why I've kept sprinkling money on him every week, just for this potential. Because if he wins this weekend, it's Sonoma, it's a road course. You've got Road America coming up, Indy road course, Watkins. But you got all these coming up in the stretch. He's quickly could go to 2-3-1. I think he's going to be that guy. And if you haven't invested money in him yet, it's probably too late. At 5-1, you're probably. But if you have, because he used to, I mean, for a while he was 7-8-1. I remember I kept hammering him at that. Now that he's 5-1, I see it coming. I mean, he's got 4 top 5s his last 5. He was third, first, second his last 3. You can kind of see it coming. He's down to 5-1. It'll probably be 4-1. Then it's going to creep up 3-1. And it's like, all right, now it's just too late. I did that strategy with Harvick a few years ago, and I was like, oh, if he wins the championship, I'm in the hole because I was too late on this. Elliott's kind of that driver this year. I think that's going to be. If you don't have him yet, you might want to hope somebody else other than Elliott wins the championship.
Well, again, the other thing is really hard. You can't take everybody,
no,
and have everybody where you're breaking even or making money in futures. And that's why for me, Chase Elliott was like to repeat is just so tough. And
it's very rare.
Yeah. I had to, and he had to be the guy. That doesn't mean that I look at him any differently because I don't. I know how good he is. But then you have some other veterans that have won championships before, like Truex, Kyle Busch, and Keselowski, and Logano. And those guys are obviously hungry to win another championship. I started to put a little bit money on Truex, and I think Logano recently, because I timed it out, and I think, okay, there's 12, 13 races left. If I start investing in these guys now, then I can get to a point where I may be able to break even with them if they do win. I'm still not sure. I'm still not sure. Like if I was going to bet, you tell me, because right now it looks like Larson and Truex are probably the top 2 guys. I don't know if it's because Larson hasn't won a championship yet, or if it's just because of how he's racing this year. But I look, Truex got the 3 wins. Larson just got his 2nd, but I still feel a little bit more like Larson. I feel a little bit more confident with Kyle Larson winning a championship than I do Truex. I just don't think it's going to be easy for Truex to win 2 championships in 3 years with a second crew chief. I think it's still going to be hard when it comes down to the last couple of rounds and key races. That's where your whole team has to come through and your crew chief and everything. And I think it's going to be kind of hard for Truex, but I still put a little bit of money on him just in case.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now I'd say they're pretty even. Right now I'd say if you just look at their speed on their car, just look at speed, I think they're even. Truex is great on the 750 package, which we've seen. It seems like Larson's more towards the 550 package. The round of 8, which is going to get you the championship for, you've got 2 550 tracks. I think Larson can get a win at one of them. And then you got Martinsville at 750. But you get to Phoenix, it's a 750 track. So who knows? Maybe Hamlin gets hot
in the Final Four.
No, we saw what he did at Phoenix in March. So what's weird is it's hard for me to completely turn my back on Harvick for my guy. That it's like you're getting good odds for him, and it seems like racing always finds a way to make this happen. That he won 9 times last year and doesn't even make it to the championship four. He hasn't won yet. He hasn't led a lot of laps yet. But watch this be the year he wins the championship off of like 1 or 2 wins.
Well, this is where the cutoff really starts to get interesting, is Kevin Harvick. Because he doesn't have a win. You have Harvick, Buescher, and then you have Reddick and Dillon. So that's 13 through 16 in the playoff standings. So now Harvick's what up? 153 points?
153,
okay.
Yep.
So that's pretty comfortable, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. As long as we don't get 16 winners, I'd say he's
the most comfortable out of the 4, but that's 4 wins. That unlikely, but we're going, as we said, to 6 racetracks where anything can happen.
Yep. That's where I'd be a little nervous if I were him for that aspect. Because is anybody going to gain? You got to look at the drivers who's behind Harvick too. Are any of those guys going to gain 153 points on Kevin Harvick, who arguably should? It's going to be in 11 races. It's going to be slim to none. Somebody's going to catch him on points. But I would honestly say the fear of one of these guys below the cut line winning would be the only fear I'd have for the 4 guys.
Well, go ahead and let's have like you had in the beginning of the season. So, all right, how many wins in the next 11 races do you think we're going to get from drivers who are currently not in the top 12 in the playoff standings?
I'm going to say I think Harvick finds victory some point. I think one of the RCR cars are going to fluke into one at some point. I think Buescher is going to be a key. The way he's running, I just have a feeling he's going to win Daytona. He's going to be on that cut line, but he's always good there. So I'm going to say 3. And as weird as it sounds, because he hasn't looked like anything all year, I'm going to say Kurt Busch, because he seems to win one race every year, is going to find a victory somewhere, someplace, somehow.
I don't know.
I'm going to say 4.
For him.
I'm going to say 4, but I'm going to say
4? Really?
Outside the top. Harvick, one of the RCRs, Buescher, and Kurt Busch. They'll be my 4. 4 to the next 11.
If you think 4, then that means Kevin Harvick better win.
He's one of my winners.
Well, I'm saying that's why he better win.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't, then he'll be sweating bullets down at the end.
I will say that's a good question. And I'll say the other question is I'll have 1, Kurt Busch, obviously. How many drivers not in the top 16 right now do we think will bump their way in?
You say 1.
I say Kurt, and I say only because he wins. Other than that, I don't think right now where we sit, any guy below the cut line right now is going to get their way in unless they win. 55 points could be made up by DiBenedetto, but you got to look at his last 4 finishes.
Who realistically, Kurt Busch, well, look, DiBenedetto, Stenhouse has had a pretty decent season. Kurt Busch you mentioned, and probably, and again, we're going over these 6 crazy courses. I probably even throw Suarez in there because he's done things that nobody expected him to. He's had a history. I think the only thing, matter of fact, that's holding him back is just probably he doesn't have the equipment and the team, but he's showing that, hey, I'm almost there. And look, he's done an incredible job. So, but that's it, right? So you'd say DiBenedetto, Stenhouse, Busch, and Suarez, maybe the only guys that could seriously get a win outside the top 16.
Yeah, you might throw in a Newman on a fluke situation like a Daytona or one of these road course races where they just come. I mean, that's the factor that, for like Sonoma, for example, some of these road course races, these guys, they're just going to go off strategy.
Yeah.
You don't need stage. You're too far behind to worry about stage points and point. You've got to, hey, you know what? I'm just going to have to go for the win.
Yep.
I'm going to have to position myself on a fuel strategy pit called it's a road course. I can pit and not lose a lap at this point. And
by the way, we didn't even mention Eric Almirola.
Yeah, who's 175 points out. He's got to win. I mean, he can win Daytona. I mean, that's where I think Daytona is going to be crazy in a sense. That look at how many guys we mentioned that have to win.
I would love it if Daytona comes down to if someone steals a win, it knocks a driver out.
I think that's what's gonna. But here's where it's gonna get fun for that. Right now, I would even say Austin Dillon's probably sinking. He's 92 points up on the cut line.
I agree.
But here's where it gets interesting for that cut line is between Tyler Reddick, who's got 5 top 10s in his last 6, and Chris Buescher, who's got 3 top 10s in his last 5. Only 5 points separate those two. You don't want to be the guy on the cut line. That because anybody can win and knock you out. There's only 5 points. You got to race between those two battling, which does that last to Daytona? Right now, I'd say they're pretty even. They look both really good right now, pretty even. And then you got the race behind that cut line to get that win to knock one of them out. So you could have essentially, let's just say that race stays like this into Daytona, a fight to not be on the bottom, and then a fight for the guys that are outside to move their way up into the bottom, which to me is compelling. It's fun.
Yeah.
I like Kevin Harvick. Got nothing against him. It'd probably be a little more impactful if it was a driver of Kevin Harvick's nature that's sitting there on the bubble. Yeah. I think it'd move the needle more than we all know Tyler Reddick and Chris Buescher, but the outside NASCAR world probably has no idea who they are or care. Yeah. But they know the name of Kevin Harvick. Like, hey, he's got to win Daytona or bump his way in and hope somebody doesn't behind him win out or he's out of the playoffs. But I would say right now, I think I'm going to say 4 guys that haven't won a race this season will win. 3 of them are already in the 16 right now, and 1 guy bumps his way in. But
Busch.
I'm going to go Kurt, even though Chipkin, for some reason, I didn't have a good chance to ask him a feel for it because he likes to talk Indy when he's in Indy, or he likes to talk NASCAR. He's at NASCAR. Is for Chipkin Ganassi is what in the world is going on with them right now. They just between Kurt and Chastain, it's baffling. Like Kurt doesn't have a top 10 in his last 12 races. Chastain's got the 1 at Coda in the rain. Other than that, he hasn't had a top 10 since the Daytona 500. So they were the last 2 spots.
Yeah, that was a disappointing race for Chastain because with a Chevy, it was a chance for him to kind of get some momentum, and then it just went away. So
you just get the feeling it's Hendrick, RCR, and then a big gap between the rest of the Chevy camp. Hendrick's got the top. RCR, they seem to be rising with Dillon and Reddick. I mean, like I said, Reddick's looking good. Him and Busch are looking good at their back. But Dillon, their only factor is it's hard for them to break in the top 5. I mean, also Dillon's got 1 top 5 all year. That was the Daytona 500. Tyler Reddick has done all this, but it's all like 7th on back. It's like 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th.
Yeah.
He's not got in. He's got 1 top 5 too. So it's like, can they get their way in the top 5? But past that, it's just baffling what Ganassi, the lack of their success, and Stewart-Haas. We've talked about that all year. I mean, they just seem to be Kevin Harvick and then everybody else.
Yep, so and that's the issue we've had all season with Kevin Harvick and whether or not he's going to gain any momentum at any point because of the team he has around him, the drivers that just don't have the experience. And that is something that we won't know, of course, until the end of the season. By the way, Reddick has only led 15 laps all season. Dillon has only led 9 laps all season.
24. 24 combined laps. Yeah.
So that's not going to get it done.
Nope. But we saw Dillon steal that win in Texas last year, too.
Sure.
It's that those guys, but where they're in a situation is they can't really gamble. If I were them, just take the points while you can. Take the stage points, take it, and further that gap.
Yeah, right now.
Where last year, they were in the position they had to go. They could gamble for a win. So does that hurt them if some of these guys outside the top 17, if you get 1 or 2 new winners, does that change their approach? So that's going to be an interesting development to watch where the top, I think the top, there's no sense to really even discuss them because we already know what they are. This bubble below, I think, to me, is the most intriguing moving forward, is these different strategies these teams can play.
And I'd probably put at the top of the list for Daytona of drivers who need a win to get in would be Stenhouse and maybe Almirola.
Yep.
It would probably be the top two.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and then Corey LaJoie has always run good at Daytona.
Yeah, that would really shake things up.
He finished ninth in the 500. He was top 10 in the 500 last year. He's the one that hit Newman. He's his only top 10 all season, and he's 29th in points. If he can stay in the top 30 and win, he's in. Michael McDowell's got 2 top 10s his last 12. He's in. Christopher Bell, 1 top 15 his last 6. He's in. Those guys are taking spots right now from people. So it's going to be interesting to see.
All right, and let's just wrap it up. Take a look at racereviewonline.net, the website. You'll update everything that's going on in NASCAR soon, because you just got back from the weekend at the Brickyard. So everything on the homepage is about what happened over the weekend, and we will start our IndyCar coverage, our race previews, a week from Thursday. So they've got the 2 races in Detroit coming up in a couple of weeks. So we'll preview those races a week from Thursday, and every Thursday starting on the 10th of June, or I should say every Thursday before a race, because it's not like NASCAR where there's just about a race every week. So every Thursday before an IndyCar race, we're going to come on the air and preview the race and go over everything, because we've had good results as far as the response, getting out the press conferences on the channel, and the fans really like to see that, and we're going to keep doing that. We're going to do the same for NASCAR as soon as we can, but whatever we can provide you fans, especially IndyCar fans out there that have been hot and heavy for these press conferences, that's the reason we decided to kind of add this new show as quickly as we can. And like I said, we'll start pumping up the press conferences in NASCAR too real soon.
Yep. We'll start that. So we got 2 IndyCar races back to back. We'll start that, and then week off. Then they're at Mid Ohio, and then they've got a month off, and we'll have some IndyCar content that month between their 2. But their season had a lot of reports, obviously, from the month of May for the 500, and then we'll gear towards NASCAR back this week, back towards both the week after the next 2 weeks, and then really NASCAR heavy, obviously, with a long break between IndyCar, and then IndyCar wraps up pretty soon after that. I mean, they're in their home stretch, and then NASCAR playoffs will start right after that. So it kind of all leads in together. But yeah, worked on a lot of IndyCar stuff. Elio with stealing the win. Not really stealing the win. He 33-1. Some people think steal the win. He had a good race, and good thrilling race. 4-time winner. It's good to see at the Indy to get that.
Oh, it was really
fun month of May.
It was the early issue on pit road, the caution. That's what really changed the entire dynamic of the race, correct?
It is, and that goes to show with this NASCAR thing, with the free pass and the stage breaks, let a race naturally play out and look at what you get. Because if they had a free pass and stage breaks, Dixon and Rossi would have found their way right back up there. But it changed everything. That caution changed the complexion of that race when Stephen Wilson spun and wrecked in pit road, because it's right at the entrance of pit road. They have to close pit road to clean up, but it was right in the pit sequence. Dixon's car ran out of gas, and then Rossi's did too, and they had to come down pit road. They had to clear a lane. But an IndyCar rule, it's hard once an engine's fired and it's heated and to shut off, and you can only put 2. It's called an emergency service. You can only put 2 gallons of gas in, because people are like, oh, it's an advantage. It's you pit during a closed pit, you got to fill up. So 2 gallons of gas on an engine, it's hard to already get started again. They just couldn't get it. They lost the lap, and it's what they well, screw it, put as much fuel in to get this thing fired, and we'll have to take our penalties. So they fell a lap down and had to start at the back, and there was only one other caution the rest of the race, and it just was hard for them to get back on the lead lap. So it changed everything. It led to a compelling race. I saw a bunch of people like, this is pure racing. This is what it should look like. And there wasn't any crazy stage breaks or fluke cautions, it just shows you that a 500-mile race, and it captured that audience. That's what NASCAR hopefully can gravitate to in the future. Let's get rid. The race ended. That's the other fact. All drivers know it's 500 miles. It's not going to go to the Indy 550. We're not going to keep finishing and tear up a bunch of race cars. So it creates that strategy: is when do you pass? Do you pass too early? You've got to get on the gun. And Elio knew with lap traffic in front, he can use a tow. They're mid pack. They didn't move the lap traffic out of the way and let it race play out naturally. And it was a good, compelling ending. I will say, from being there, the video board, the fan experience, I think, could be a little bit better at the track in a sense. The video boards, the PA, everything was gearing towards that battle, which it played out. That ended up being the lead in the end. But with like 25 to go, there were 3 drivers that nobody was talking about were trying to stretch fuel. It was Felix Rosenquist, Takuma Sato, and
Yeah,
J.R.
they were
Hildebrand.
talking about it on the television broadcast, but
you would never know out at the track unless you had the media stuff like we had, because that's all they were talking about. People are up cheering and oohing and on, and I'm like, that's not even for the lead. Like, if a caution comes out, there's going to be a lot of pissed off race fans when they realize, I thought these guys were leading. Who are these 3 up front? Because then they would be able to make it on the end of fuel. So, which to me, that was fun. You had 2 different strategies there at the end. It played out naturally who should have won.
VK actually looked
compelling.
like if the craziness of the caution didn't come out the way it did, VK had a really good chance of winning that race.
Yeah, I think he had the best car on the day. I think if you look at who had the fastest 2 cars are VK and Palou, I think. Dixon, I can't say what he had because he was out of it pretty early. He was already a lap down. He didn't really see what he could do. He was kind of biding his time riding in third that first stint, just saving gas. VK looked phenomenal. That car was a bullet. That car, which that was my pick. He should have won. And then Elio was one of my sleepers. So at least it played out that way. But I think VK and Palou, and Elio admitted Palou had a better car. He was running 221 by himself. I wasn't hitting 220s by myself in that traffic. And he had a faster car. I just timed the pass right and used the tow. But if that race played out naturally like that, I think it would have been a VK Palou fight for the win. But hey, Indy picks its winners. It was a good race, and now we got to wait another year to see it again.
All right, sounds good. Again, a week from Thursday, we'll be previewing the race in Detroit for IndyCar coverage on Prime Sports Speed. We're going to be back tomorrow with CJ Radoon right here on Prime Sports NASCAR. We're going to preview the Save Mart Toyota 350, or the Toyota Save Mart 350, whatever you want to call it, from Sonoma, right? Sonoma.
Yep, Sonoma Raceway.
And we should have our picks and our futures up on the racereviewonline.net website in a few hours, probably later today, to get ready for the show tomorrow. We'll go over all the picks and everything else for NASCAR with CJ tomorrow. So, Eric, appreciate it as always. We'll talk NASCAR with you again next Monday. And then, like I said, a week from Thursday, we'll get back on the IndyCar train. So, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.